Jackson Jr., welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. show. I have a very special guest who I will introduce in a moment, but I wanted to opine for just a moment on a reflection that I had early morning and bring our listeners into that thinking. I got up this morning and I wrestled with the first African Americans to ever get elected to Congress. They were elected during first Reconstruction. That would be the period after the Civil War, after the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were added to the Congress. To be during that period when the 15th Amendment allowed African American men to vote. About 16 African Americans had the privilege of serving in the Congress of the United States during that period. And then George White in 1901 delivered a famous speech called the Phoenix Speech, delivered on January 29, 1901. He said, "This is perhaps the Negro's temporary farewell to the American Congress. But let me say, Phoenix-like, he will rise up again someday." Today's African American representation in Congress numbers more than 60 blacks in the Congress of the United States. 60, the largest number of representatives that we've had in the history of the United States, and certainly in first Reconstruction and second Reconstruction, the largest number. I had to ask myself the question, why didn't the African Americans in first Reconstruction put up a fight to keep African Americans in Congress? And the answer is obvious. They did. They did fight for representation. But the misinformation campaign during that era must have been so overwhelming from their little congressional districts, allowed them to come and serve and represent the newly freed slaves. The misinformation, the lies, the mistruths, the Tilden Hayes Compromise, withdrawing federal troops and federal protections from the South. Oftentimes when we hear that story that the Tilden Hayes Compromise allowed Hayes to be president, but the Democrat, Tilden, insisted on withdrawing federal troops from the South. When we hear that, we think about, as African Americans, that the federal troops were there to protect us. They weren't just there to protect us. They were also there to protect working class whites who had been taken advantage of by slaveholders, who became overseers, who ended up in some kind of free state of Jones, who were a natural part of our coalition but found themselves in some form of indentured servitude. But the lies and the press and the media and the misinformation campaign was so extraordinary that by 1901, George White gave a speech that he simply said, Phoenix-like, maybe one day the Negro will return to Congress. Not until Brown versus the Board of Education, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the public accommodations movement, the civil rights movement, did we return to Congress in any great measure. And now my biggest worry, at the end of second Reconstruction, the lies, the misinformation, so great, so overwhelming that we could spend a day on just 2 stories, and there are 10 of them a day, 15 of them a day, 20 of them a day. And they're so overwhelming that no news person or journalist knows which story to talk about. They're all so devastating that it's just a huge misinformation campaign that we can't quite wrap our fingers around. And yet we know that there's a 2030 census coming. We know there's a midterm election coming. We know that Donald Trump today withdrew the nomination of Elsie Stefanik from being the ambassador to the UN because the margins in the Congress of the United States are so close. They need her vote in the Congress of the United States, and they can't waste their time with that member of Congress in the UN because that seat right there would likely become another member of our progressive coalition. So overwhelming that the Negro did not know how to respond in first Reconstruction. Just like the Negro is struggling with voices to respond at the end of second Reconstruction. With a new census, with new redistricting, with an attack on the Voting Rights Act, just like Oscar or Greg White, Congressman George White delivered his Phoenix speech. Within 5, 6, 7 years, even though we have 60 African Americans in Congress, Democrats and Republicans soon will be fighting over lines and districts and how they got a chance to win. And it always comes at the expense of moving some black people away from a black congressman and packing them into a district with a marginalized or margin-based Democrat. That Democrat usually does not represent African Americans in Congress. They have all kinds of excuses why they need to reach out to the other side, why they need to talk to MAGA, why you need to understand why their districts are so close. Well, my next guest after we come forward will be Delmarie Cobb, one of the nation's foremost political scientists, thinkers, consultants, campaign organizer, and was responsible in large measure for my election to Congress in 1995. She sees some trends. She's written about them. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the closing of pharmacies in African American communities. Some insights and some trends that she sees in this troubling time as well. She's kind of the bellwether of politics in my life. She's capable of being an advisor to any president of the United States, gubernatorial campaign, senatorial campaign. She worked on my father's campaign in 1984 and 1988 as a communications director, one of the most effective that's ever done it. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, our very special guest will be Delmarie Cobb.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Someone had a birthday.
Yep, 50. Can't believe it.
50 years of wisdom.
Great segue. We have health news, a CDC update.
Pneumococcal vaccination is now recommended for adults 50 or older. Says here, we're over 6 times more likely to be hospitalized with pneumococcal pneumonia than adults under 50.
I don't love those odds.
Same. Look what I found. Pfizer's Prevnar 20 is proven to help protect adults against pneumococcal pneumonia and invasive pneumococcal disease in just 1 dose, and millions have already gotten it.
Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you have a severe allergy to its ingredients. A weakened immune system may lower your response. Common side effects include injection site pain and swelling, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138. Visit Prevnar20.com or talk to your doctor or pharmacist.
I'm on Prevnar20.com now, scheduling my appointment.
Good idea. And happy 50th.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down, get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pegol is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-550-9651. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. Generous programs are now available that can give you a fresh start. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems. We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com or call 800-550-9651. That's 800-550-9651. Tax Relief Advocates, real solutions for real people.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Del Marie Cobb. Del Marie is one of the nation's most sought-after political consultants. Del Marie, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, and thank you for the compliments, as always.
Oh, you've earned them, you've deserved them, and it's time that we put some roses right at your feet. Del Marie, you've picked up on a trend that has been written about in a number of newspapers about Walgreens and other pharmacies closing in the African American community. What do you make of this? What does it say to you? What should we gather, and what should we be concerned about?
Well, one of the things you see nationwide is not only food deserts in Black communities, but now growing increasingly pharmacy deserts. And not only are you seeing food deserts and pharmacy deserts, to fill in the gap, you're seeing all of these dialysis centers that are suddenly popping up. So we're going to starve you to death. We're going to make sure you don't have medicine. And then we're going to be there with our dialysis centers to get rich off of you. And as always, Black people are a commodity, and we're always a commodity for everybody else to get rich.
You've noticed in some of your research and thinking that these stores are being closed and targeted in certain zip codes, primarily African Americans, but they're using the justification of cost savings, all of the rhetoric that the upper echelons of corporate America, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, and others use. But they're really something more nefarious here, you've seemed to suggest.
Well, it's, people always say it's about cost savings when it comes to us. And people buy into that. I've even had people I know, when I started this whole thing about Walgreens leaving by my house, and it had been there since 1953. So for 71 years, it's been there. And I know for a fact, you could never go in that Walgreens without having to wait in line at least a half an hour for whatever it was you were doing, either in the front of the store at checkout or in the back of the store at the pharmacy. And so obviously they were making money. But people believe, because of course we've been so indoctrinated to believe that anytime something happens in our community is because we are either stealing or we're not patronizing the store enough. And when you look at this community alone, where I live, you've got all these senior buildings. You've got at least 10 senior buildings, not counting all the high rises. This area has more high rises than probably the north side, similar to the north side and similar to South Shore. And so you've got all these built-in customers because there is no other drugstore nearby. And to tell me that you're not making any money, that's crazy. They're making money. What they're doing is they're offsetting the savings that they are going to get by closing stores in Black and brown communities with the bad investments they have made over the last decade. And so rather than close stores in white communities where there are redundancies, stores within 2 or 3 blocks of each other, they are going to close stores in Black and brown communities where you're the only store there is for these people to patronize.
One of the things that I think many of our listeners have noticed within some of these stores in our communities is to get a razor for your face, to get some aspirin, you've got to go to the clerk and they've got to stick a key in something that should be available on the shelf over the counter. Your thoughts about retail theft and the perception that it's overwhelmingly African American?
Well, it's funny because we've been living with that concept for a long time in Black communities, where you had to get permission to buy something by waiting for somebody to come help you. But white people were like, oh, no, we are not doing this. And of course, after COVID, when shoplifting did increase, we saw that all on the news all over the country, shoplifting increased. And Walgreens decided to lock up everything everywhere in all the neighborhoods. And white people said, oh, no, we're not dealing with this. This is unacceptable. And the CEO of Walgreens admitted it to his shareholders. That was a mistake. We should have never done that, because when people have to wait on buying products, they simply leave and don't buy the products. That is, if you have the luxury of leaving. And those people who have the luxury of leaving left. Black people and older Black people who don't have the luxury because they're not online, they have to go to the store. And for many of them at a certain age, going to the store is your activity. That is your link to the rest of the world. And so you look forward to going to the store and the grocery store or the drugstore to do your errands, because that is your link to being in the outside world. So that's not a luxury a lot of people have.
I want to pivot, if you don't mind, to a wonderful article that you wrote the other day titled "Fat Meat is Greasy." Del Marie wrote an article that used some of the mother wit of her own mother, and she used these two quotes from her mother. "You knew darn well I was a snake before you took me in." And the second quote from your mother was, "You must not believe that fat meat is greasy." She took these two quotes and then intricately wove them into the campaign of Donald Trump, the rhetoric of Donald Trump, the first term, the 4 years that he was out of power, and now the first 100 days of his administration. Del Marie, share with our listeners, one, where can they get this article? Where can they read it for themselves? And secondly, share with us your thoughts behind your mother's insights on what we're looking at.
Well, as I always said, my mother, even to this day, I hear her in my head. And so whenever I need a reset, I just reach for one of her sayings and it's always spot on. and so I thought about her sayings for this occasion, because how could people not know who Donald Trump was? I mean, they had to just be fooling themselves. And if in fact they were fooling themselves, then they must not believe fat meat's greasy, because fat meat is not going to be ungreasy because you want it to be. You know? And so it's just amazing to me that everything that we knew was going to happen is happening. I mean, we saw this movie before, we know how it's going to end. And so this is not a surprise to us. This is not a thriller. We know exactly what was going to happen. And so it's just amazing that people are aghast and are surprised that it's happening so rapidly. But it's happening rapidly because if in a traditional sense, he would have only 2 years to do all of these things because of the next election, where they might absolutely lose Congress. And so he's got to do everything quickly. And then on the other hand, that's his MO. MO is chaos. And so if he can keep all the chaos up and keep people wondering which way to turn and where to go and what to do, and oh my God, then he's succeeding at what it is he's trying to do. And so, you know, that's why I just decided, you know, I've got to pull from my mom. And I was also thinking about maybe I will just use all of her witticisms from now on.
Not witticism.
Right. To refer to him.
Let me dig a little bit deeper, and maybe your mother can offer some insights on this. I opined at the very beginning of the program about the overwhelming nature of what first Reconstruction must have meant for those African Americans who were elected to Congress and state legislatures, when the lies came fast and furious, the misinformation campaign, the Ku Klux Klan, and the terrors at the polling, the right-nighters, and terror at the polling places, and poll taxes, and county jelly beans, and all of that. Tell me how many jelly beans are in a jar before I will allow you to vote. And then all of a sudden, here you have George White by 1901 saying, well, I'm the last Negro here, and maybe one day we'll be back. Of course, we don't turn back. We don't return back in any great measure until Oscar DePriest comes from the state of Illinois, and then Ed Brooke is elected. It's sometime between 1950, I think it is, and 1960, somewhere in that space. Ed Brooke shows up, but now we have 60 African Americans in Congress. I would imagine, and Del Marie, you sat through two of these with me. When I was elected in 1995, I had to sit through the census in 2000, and I sat through the census in 2010, and that led to redistricting. And our biggest fight was how many blacks in the 2nd district or in the 1st district or the 7th district were we willing to give to, let's say, a Dan Lipinski or to a a Bill Lipinski at the time? How many blacks were we willing to give? Now, these guys, when they get to Congress, they don't represent us. But in order to keep the Democratic seat, we had to give some areas to Luis Gutierrez to draw the 4th congressional district. I would imagine that the 2030 census and redistricting is going to show some lines where Democrats are going to be demanding that every black congressional district become unpacked so that they can have margins of victory for more and more white Democrats to get elected, but it comes at the expense of the Congressional Black Caucus and our people's representation.
Well, what's so interesting about that is, and looking at Chicago again as a microcosm, because Chicago has been so pivotal throughout history. And you mentioned Oscar DePriest, who became the first black congressman since Reconstruction. And then all the ones who followed after him out of Chicago, out of the 2nd Ward, out of the 3rd Ward, out of the 1st Congressional District. And we had some giants. And so when you look at that as an example, what you've seen is, and this is why it's so important for the electorate voters to be engaged. You have to be engaged every day. This is not, well, I voted, so I did my part. No, you voted. That was the beginning of your part. Now you've got to hold those elected officials' feet to the fire and stay engaged every step of the way in order for them to get reelected. You have people who are being reelected for a fraction of the vote of the people who live in their districts or wards or whatever. And that should not ever be the case. And so what you see, if you use Chicago, as you hollow out these communities, and I know this is happening all over the country in Black communities, as you hollow out these communities, you have to draw the districts that start including people. I compare it to Pac-Man. So now you're Pac-Man, you got to find people. You got to find people wherever you can find them. And so, people think about the drawing of districts and wards in terms of geography. It's not about geography, as you know, it's about population. So if you've got no people in a certain area, now you got to find them. And when you start finding them, the wards, the districts, they move north, as in Chicago, which means they gather up more white people as they move north. Now, as they gather up more white people, what happens is traditionally Black districts and voting areas, which is why Chicago's had the success it has had in terms of Black empowerment, political empowerment, you begin to dilute the vote.
And in other words, it's a nice way of saying, when I first met him running for office, he was my brother. He was my main man. Hey, bro, good to see you. But by the time he starts picking up more white folks, he's the distinguished gentleman from somewhere, and he's got to talk like this and everything because he's now representing. He ain't just there talking about red, black, and green. Exactly. He got other issues that are important, like taxes. Exactly. That's the transition they go through from being super Black on the corner all the way to, I've been my colleague on the other side of that. They go to all that nonsense.
You have to appeal to a broader audience in order to get reelected.
That's right. Your experience in national campaigns, when you think about redistricting and what it could mean for the quality of our representatives going forward?
Well, you see, and this goes back again to being engaged. You saw that with Donald Bowman. You saw that with Cori Bush. You had AIPAC decide that they were too radical because they spoke out against Israel. And as a result of them speaking out against Israel, they put in Black people who were more palatable. And so even if you have people who are Democrat who are putting in the Blacks who are least offensive and over the ones who are radical or progressive, you're getting it from both angles. You're getting it from Republicans and you're getting it from Democrats, which is why you have to be engaged.
I have to remind myself that even in the congressional district that I represented, we went from Gus Savage, my man, all the way to Mel Reynolds when AIPAC decided to drop their money in the 2nd congressional district. This is a trend that has been going for a number of decades now. And for quality representation, we're going to have to do a little bit better and hold these elected officials accountable. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. My very special guest is Del Marie Cobb. When we come forward, we will continue the conversation on the state of the world and the state of our affairs. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Mike Island with 4 things you should know on the Black Information Network. The number of Americans filing first-time unemployment claims was less than expected. The Labor Department reports receiving 224,000 initial requests for benefits in the week ending March 22nd. As of today, the Social Security Administration is enacting a policy change that will see it withhold 100% of any overpayments made to recipients. More than 9 million Americans could see significant declines in their credit scores as their student loans go unpaid. Delinquent student loans are going to soon start showing up on credit reports for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic. Multiple states across the U.S. are bracing for more severe weather. Idaho is preparing for up to a foot of snow. Texas is getting rain, 6 months worth, by this weekend. I'm Mike Island on your home for Black News First, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Would you like your community to be recognized as a beautiful and clean place to live? Help the place you love become a designated Clean California community. Take the pledge today at cleanca.com. 0 litter is the goal.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The LA Sparks are making plans to retire Candace Parker's number 3 jersey. The ceremony for the WNBA legend is scheduled for halftime of the Sparks' June 29th game against the Chicago Sky at Crypto.com. Parker played 13 of her 16 WNBA seasons with the Sparks. The 5-time All-Star led the Sparks to 3 WNBA championships, was MVP in 2008, and Defensive Player of the Year in 2020. Parker is the 3rd Sparks player to have her jersey retired. She joins Lisa Leslie and Penny Toller. During her career with the Sparks, Parker averaged 16.9 points and 8.6 rebounds. Parker holds the Sparks franchise record in assists with 1,331. Today is opening day for Major League Baseball. The Dodgers are at home against the Detroit Tigers. The Dodgers are trying to become the first team in 25 years to win 2 straight World Series. The Yankees did it in 2000. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
A new day is on the horizon. Behind every great moment in history, there's a woman whose story went untold. This March, KBLA Talk 1580 celebrates the trailblazers who changed our world. From Rosa Parks to Constance Baker Motley, from Katherine Johnson to Kamala Harris, these are the voices that broke barriers, challenged limits, and reshaped America. Join us all month long as we honor the women who dared to dream, fight, and lead. KBLA Talk 1580, amplifying women's stories that inspire generations.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. Every girl deserves a chance to shine. That's the belief behind Forgiving for Living, Inc. Since 1999, this organization has been empowering at-risk girls ages 13 to 18, helping them overcome behavioral and mental health challenges. Founder Wendy Gladney's personal journey inspired the mission to give girls hope and purpose through the power of forgiveness. Through their ambassador program, workshops, and annual conference, Forgiving for Living has touched over 3,000 young lives, providing mentoring, life skills, training, and tools for building self-esteem and confidence. You can make a difference. Visit forgivingforliving.org to donate, volunteer, become a mentor, or find help for a young girl in need. Forgiving for Living Inc., building brighter futures for young girls. Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Someone had a birthday.
Yep, 50. Can't believe it.
50 years of wisdom.
Great segue. We have health news, a CDC update.
Pneumococcal vaccination is now recommended for adults 50 or older. Says here, we're over 6 times more likely to be hospitalized with pneumococcal pneumonia than adults under 50.
I don't love those odds.
Same. Look what I found. Pfizer's Prevnar 20 is proven to help protect adults against pneumococcal pneumonia and invasive pneumococcal disease in just one dose, and millions have already gotten it.
Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you have a severe allergy to its ingredients. A weakened immune system may lower your response. Common side effects include injection site pain and swelling, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138. Visit Prevnar20.com or talk to your doctor or pharmacist.
I'm on Prevnar20.com now, scheduling my appointment.
Good idea. And happy 50th.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Though you may not drive a great big Cadillac, against the white walls, TV antennas in the back. You may not have a car at all, but remember, brothers and sisters, you can still stand tall. Just be thankful for what you got. Though you may not drive.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Delmarie Cobb, media and political consultant. Her career spans the historic credible presidential campaigns of the first African-American man and the first African-American woman nominee of the Democratic Party. She's also served as the first African-American press secretary for the Democratic National Convention upon its successful return to Chicago in 1996. Delmarie, welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you.
Now, let me ask you a question. There are some signs that Democrats are fighting back, and while the victories are in small races, state Senate races and state House races, Democrat out of Pennsylvania, Dan Goner, won a special election, I believe, just yesterday, giving hope to Democrats that there is a reaction out there that is palatable, that people in deep red districts are willing to vote against their MAGA inclinations because they don't like the direction that Donald Trump is going. I heard Senator Vincent Hughes on Morning Joe this morning and on CNN as well, talking about the truth of that message and why bringing that message directly to the people actually does work. I'd like to hear your thoughts. And the reason this is particularly important is because you told me, Jesse, listen, people will vote against someone for a moment, but if you don't give them something to vote for, it's always going to be troubling. Democrats still need a message to vote for. Walk us through that process, Del.
Well, I think, fortunately, they're getting help from Trump administration to make their case. We're not seeing Democrats be as active as a lot of us would like them to be, although I believe everybody has to, it's all hands on deck. So everybody needs to be doing what they think they need to do in order to help move this along. And so it may take many different forms. You may not be comfortable at Tesla takedowns, but you may be comfortable doing phone banking and making calls and writing cards and things like that. So you have to decide what it is you're comfortable doing, but you have to do something. And what we saw in Pennsylvania, this this week is people seeing what's happening, the government being dismembered in front of them. And this is not what they said they voted for. They said they were voting for the price of eggs to come down. We all know that that's not true, but they convinced themselves that it was. But what they're seeing now is it's really coming home. You thought eggs were coming home. It's really coming home when they're talking about taking away your veterans benefits, when they're talking about Social Security, when they're possibly Medicare, when they're talking about voting rights, all these things that they're talking about now that are hitting not only one person in the house, but almost everybody in the household. And so that's what you saw is we did not, this is not what we bargained for. And this is not what we voted for. And so we've got to make a statement. And in a primarily Republican district, a Democrat who wasn't supposed to win won.
I before I go to Doge and Elon Musk and the billionaire class that has entered this cycle and politics so forcefully, you shared with us that of $1 billion raised by Kamala Harris and the fact that 92% of African American women voted for Kamala Harris, how much money was spent on Black media through firms like yours and others?
Well, I don't know, but I do know she did a lot more than previous candidates who were running for president with Black media, and that was good. It's never going to be what it should be. We know that because of the people who are making the decisions, but it was better than it has been. Barack Obama didn't spend a lot of money with Black media. Black media was so invested in his campaign that they spent money themselves by turning their papers into personal newsletters for him. And as a result, a lot of them almost went bankrupt, and some did go bankrupt after the campaign was over because they had spent so much energy into making sure we had the first Black president. And they did not get that in return in terms of reciprocity.
Like a seat in the White House press briefing room, like insider interviews that would have allowed them to sell papers and break national stories, which would have brought more editors and Black reporters to the forefront. Donald Trump has completely redone the White House press room with these bloggers and people that are sycophantic supporters of his efforts. It's just shameful to me that when we do get in these positions, we don't bring forward the people who stood by us the most and give them the access that they need. Your comment and thoughts on the access.
That's always a fight. When I was working your father's campaign in 1988, it was a fight for me. Not because your father didn't want it, but you had other staff members who didn't understand that the traveling press weren't the only ones who should have access. But when we would travel and go to these small towns, I made sure that the Black reporters in these small towns got 5 minutes with your father to have a conversation. Because what we fail to understand sometimes is that the reason white people hire us is because they think we're going to bring them something that somebody white cannot bring them. Mm-hmm. If they find out that you can't do any better than the white person they have on staff, then why do we need you? And so we have to go all out of our way to make sure that we give Black people access. And so that's what happened in that administration, because even if you're the president and you're not dealing with the minutia, you see who's being called. You're given the list of names in the press corps at the White House when you're doing a news conference, and you've got to say, wait a minute, I don't see so-and-so. I don't see so-and-so. We need to call them. Or you just call them yourself. You see them sitting there.
It's really interesting. In the last, as we prepare to come forward in this break in just a moment, I've had a heart transplant surgeon on this show this week. I've had a cardiologist on this show this week. And now I have an African American woman political consultant on this show this week. And this is the end of Women's History Month. And almost every one of you women has had a unique story, even though you are at the top of your field. 0.00001% of doctors are Black women transplant surgeons or cardiologists or political consultants on the scale that you represent, Del Marie. And yet everyone has this story that somehow the perception when they first walk in the room is that somehow they are the DEI hire. We have about a minute before we come forward. Share with us your thoughts on that.
Well, a lot of times people don't understand what it is you do. They don't understand what it is you did to get where you are. And so that's often the default position is, well, somebody must have done something because you couldn't have gotten here on your own. When we all know as Black people that we are there because we pulled up our own bootstraps, not because anybody opened the door and let us in because they were doing us a favor. They let us in because we worked and clawed our way to get where we are so you could even see us.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is Del Marie Cobb, and she reminds me in this moment, it's hard for some of us to imagine. You think about how unqualified Pete Hegseth is and Elsie Stefanik and some of these people who are making some horrible mistakes in the federal government. Imagine if you were president of the United States or the governor of your state, and every morning that you walked into the office, the first person who meets you at the door is Del Marie Cobb, going over the issues of the day with you to share with you what you should be saying. This is the kind of representation that she's represented across my political career. I'm so grateful she's my guest. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, our final segment with Del Marie Cobb.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go: shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms: irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Are you a victim of the timeshare trap and think there's no way out? I'm Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group, the original timeshare cancellation expert. And I'm here to tell you that there is a way out. All you need to do is give my office a call. I will send you a timeshare exit information kit absolutely free, explaining how the timeshare industry works and your options for cancellation.
Call Wesley now for your free info kit. Call 800-335-2299. That's 800-335-2299.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Small businesses are the heart of America. But you don't have to go it alone. As the nation's largest nonprofit resource of expert business mentoring, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs build their businesses for free. Get the connections, education, and guidance you need with SCORE. We're ready to help. Find a mentor today at score.org.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm. If you own a timeshare, don't miss this public service announcement from Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group.
If you receive an unsolicited phone call or mail piece to discuss selling, renting, or especially canceling your timeshare, don't fall for it. If you really want out of your timeshare, hang the phone up immediately or throw that mail piece in the trash and contact your timeshare resort or Wesley Financial Group for assistance with your timeshare. As the only Inc. 500 timeshare cancellation company, our knowledge, experience, and results has made Wesley a trusted resource for over 40,000 families we've helped get out of their timeshare. Give us a call and I'll send you our timeshare exit information kit free with the straight facts about your timeshare and all of your options for cancellation.
Call for your free info kit, 800-511-2112. That's 800-511-2112. 800-511-2112.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. In our final segment, I want to read part of this article from Delmarie Cobb. She says, remember, candidate Trump told a group of Christians the November election was the last time they would have to vote for him. Quote, in 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good, you're not going to have to vote. He didn't say it would be the last time they could vote for him, but that they would have to vote for him, So, Delmarie Cobb, where can we get this article? Fat meat is greasy.
Well, the best way to get it is to my PAC's Facebook page. So that's Ida's Legacy, after Ida B. Wells, IDAS Legacy. And we put all of them on the Facebook page for people to read.
Thank you for sharing that. The next question I want to ask is, how do people get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is by calling me or by going to the PAC's website, which is www.idaslegacy.com. And you can always call my office, which is 773-373-3860.
Now, I want to ask this question, particularly for our listeners in Los Angeles. Governor Gavin Newsom, it's not a big secret, he's thinking about running for president of the United States, and he's begun a podcast of reaching out to the MAGA crowd. Kind of reminds me of First Reconstruction, reaching out to people who are not likely to vote for you under any circumstances, but you have to at least appeal or at least appear as reaching out to others. As a political consultant, is this a good use of his time, or should he be registering people in our base across the country, preparing for a great battle?
Well, I always say that you shore up your own base first, and then you try and get other people. But you make sure your people are taken care of first. And so the example you just gave is the best example. We see that Trump won by the same margin that he lost by to Biden. So given that 6 million or 5 million people who didn't vote, and many of them didn't vote, it's not because he got so many more votes. Many of them didn't vote. We've got to go to those people and make sure they are registered, make sure that they are engaged, make sure that they turn out and vote next time. And again, I think I've had this discussion with you before. The biggest mistake the Democrats make is they really believe Black people have nowhere else to go. They don't understand, as I say all the time, when we have nowhere else to go, we go nowhere.
Go to a barbecue.
Right. And so for some reason that there's a disconnect why people don't get that.
Down south in Benny Thompson's district and in South Carolina with Jim Clyburn, he said, we just go to a fish fry.
Right.
I don't know why they don't get that. And I think that this idea of transparency in politics, this idea of speaking genuinely to the base, your thoughts on Bernie Sanders and AOC's rallies around the country. Is this towards a resistance movement that's sustainable?
Well, that goes back to what I was saying before. Everybody's got to do what they're comfortable doing. I think that's great that they're doing that. Everybody's not going to do that. The difference is those people who come out for an event, you got to make sure that translates into votes. Because we saw in 2016, Bernie Sanders, if you remember when he went out to California, he did a 72-hour straight rally, 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 rally. Every rally got bigger and bigger, and Hillary won in California. Mm-hmm. So you had the big crowd, and the voters came out and voted for Hillary. So you've got to make sure that people aren't coming to an event, but they actually are engaged, and that engagement is going to translate into votes.
Do you have any concerns that Donald Trump's attacks on the Voting Rights Act and his most recent executive order requiring proof of citizenship, a passport, in order to register to vote, and that all votes must be counted on the election day could undermine minority participation at every level of the system?
Absolutely. That's what it's designed to do. He's trying everything he can. Goes back to the quote you just read from what I wrote, is he doesn't plan to step down quietly at the end of his term. Now, we don't know how he's going to do it, but believe me, they're trying to figure it all out now, because he wants to be president for life. And he wants this to be the new family business. And so he's going to do everything he can. And with the help of the richest man in the world, they're going to try to buy the next election.
Your thoughts on Doge and what they're doing, and as to whether or not it's constitutional?
Oh, we know it's not constitutional. And what's such a shame on this Women's History Month, I think this is very interesting from my perspective as a woman, is that I could not be married to any of these men. Because, I mean, as a woman, if you had any of these men as your husband, and with as weak-kneed and as spineless as they are, how would you respect them? How could you respect them? I mean, you are willing to absolutely give up and abdicate all of your power as an elected official because you see somebody because of Donald Trump. And so this is unbelievable. And your morality. It's not just giving up your power, but giving up your morality, especially those who claim to be so Christian.
You know, we only have a few moments left, and I was wondering, I'm particularly proud of the leadership at this hour that Jasmine Crockett is providing from Texas. As a political consultant, do you see a new generation of fierce African-American young women entering the process with that kind of courage, integrity, and clarity?
She's not the majority. So let's not get crazy and think that, oh my God, things are changing, because I'm seeing too much of that on the ground level. People still want to be a part of the system. They still want to rise within the system. And so if that means I've got to play the game, they're willing to play the game. She feels confident enough in her background that if she lost the seat tomorrow, she would still be okay. And it's because when you have that kind of freedom, that's when you're able to speak up.
Yeah, I'm profoundly concerned about the next generation having a working knowledge of the history of our people. I'm also concerned about the organizations, Del, that we have not built. I don't see the NAACP, and I'm a lifetime member, as particularly equipped for this hour. I don't think that the Urban League, which has done an extraordinary job in terms of the Black middle class under Mark Morial's leadership, I don't see them politically equipped for this hour. I can say the same of the Rainbow Coalition and other organizations that either missed the tide on where the country was going with respect to this MAGA crowd. But I do see white evangelicals and organizations that are engaged in politics on the right unashamedly in ways that we are not engaged. I know we have about a minute left in our program. Your thought on the state of Black organizations in
No,
these times.
You're absolutely right. And that's what's so important is that we have got to get engaged at every level. That's what that's what's missing at this moment. We had all of that. That's what got us through slavery. That's what got us through Jim Crow. That's what got us through the civil rights movement. It was family and faith. And those institutions have been disbanded. And that's why we're sort of out in the wilderness wandering now, because we are not coming together in terms of Black fate. White people are coming together in terms of white fate.
My very special guest for the last hour has been Del Marie Cobb. Del Marie is one of the nation's most sought after political consultants. She has run campaigns from coast to coast. I know we're live in Los Angeles today. Del Marie, give me that number one more time very quickly.
773-373-3860.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest has been none other than Del Marie Cobb.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.